dive into the learning curriculum. But before that, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Devi, Triana, and
my name is Yolanda, Sitanggang.
My name is Dyvia, Saragih.
And my name is Manurung.
as now remember, please pay attention and give us corrections at the end of the thing. Thank you.
So, the definition of assessment standard is independent
Yeah. So the teacher must to measure the students' capability in historical skill such as the conceptual understanding of historical thinking, process skill, awareness, research, and practical skill. Next. Okay, we continue to the function of assessment standard in the independent curriculum. So the first functions of assessment standard is to setting clear achievement criteria. Standard help teacher decide what indicators will show that a learning objective has been met. So the use of assessment standard is to help teacher to decide what indicator will show that a learning objective. For example, when the teacher teach the student about the speaking skill, the component or the indicator of the assessment is about the pronunciation, the fluency, and then the confidence of the students, which is become a indicator in assessment. So the second is ensuring fair and consistent judgment. Assessment standard guide teachers' evaluation are objective, reliable, and based on the same expectation for all the students. When the teacher wants to assess the student achievement, the indicator or the rubric must be same and not based on the mood of the teacher. And the third function of assessment standard is guiding the use of appropriate assessment tools. Standard helps teacher choose the right methods such as observation, performance tasks, project, essays, or open-ended questions according to the learning goals. So the existence of assessment standard is help the teacher to use the appropriate assessment tools in their teaching. The fourth function of assessment standard is aligning assessment with learning objectives. Standard action that assessment are connected to the intended learning outcomes, following the understanding by design approach used in independent curriculum. The fifth function of assessment standard is supporting the use of rubric and checklist. Assessment standard provide the foundation for scoring rubric and checklist, making it easier for teacher to evaluate student work clearly and systematically. So the assessment standard itself is like the first, help the teacher to choose the appropriate indicators and the supporting rubrics and checklists for their teaching. Thank you.
Okay, guys, now we go to types of assessment standard in independent curriculum. Diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic assessment is a theory assessment used before learning begins to identify students' prior knowledge, misconceptions, and readiness. For purpose knowing student initial understanding, adjusting learning strategies, and identifying students who need support or enrichment from the start. For the example, like prior question and teacher prompt discussion. Next, formative assessment. Formative assessment is conducted during the learning process to monitor understanding and give immediate feedback to improve learning quality. For the purpose to check if students understand the content and to guide the next step of teaching, and then to provide feedback teacher to student and student to teacher. For example, fill in the blanks during exercise, group discussion, observation of attitude, and teacher question during explanation. Assessment as learning. Assessment encourage students to reflect, self-assess, and monitor their own progress with metacognitive awareness. For the purpose to students evaluate their own learning and builds autonomy and responsibility, and then help students understand their strength and weakness. For the example, reflection question at the end of lesson. example of exercise question: what did I understand well today? And what do I still need help with? And then example-nya self-evaluation during role play. And then summative assessment. Summative assessment is used at the end of learning to measure achievement of learning outcomes for the purpose to determining overall mastery, basic core final score, and then evaluating learning effectiveness. For example, final speaking, final rubrics like fluency, pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary, and then summative listening tests like media details and inference. For remedial and arrangement part of curriculum standard, given the student who master the material faster, for example, student who finish yearly to analyze digital payment and vintage versus cash problems in more depth. Assessment type, remedial enrichment is not a separate assessment type, but it is a follow-up action from formative or summative result.
Oke, kita masuk ke dalam assessment standar for basic English skill: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. The first is reading. The goal is to comprehend and interpret written text. What is assessed? Assessment standards for reading evaluate the student's ability to understand the meaning, structure, and intent of a text. The key criteria of assessment. The first is comprehension. It's all about understand student identify the main idea, key fact, specific details, and the sequence of events. The second is inference or interpreting. Can the student read between the lines to understand the implied meaning, the author's proposed thought, and the point of view? The third is analysis. Can the student analyze the text structure, evaluate arguments, distinguish between a fact and opinion, and understand persuasive techniques? And the next is vocabulary in context. Can the student deduce the meaning of unfamiliar words from how they are used in the text? And the last is cohesions. Can the student understand reference and follow the logical flow of ideas? What is the example assessment? Task and standard. First is beginner. The task is read a short menu, and the standard is correctly identify the price of the 3 items and a suitable dish for a vegetarian. The next is intermediate. The task is create a blog post about a cultural festival, and the standard is accurately summarize the main event and 2 traditions and infer how the author feels about the festival. And the last is advanced. The task is create an editorial on premade policy, and the standard is analyze the author's arguments, identify any logical fallacies, and evaluate the effectiveness of the evidence provided. The second is writing. The goal is to produce clear, coherent, and purposeful text. What is assessed? Assessment standard for writing focus on the product's content, organization, language use, and technical accuracy. The key criteria for assessment. The first is task achievement or fulfillment. Does the writing full address the prompt or task? Is the purpose clear and achieved? The second is coherence and cohesion. Is the text logically organized with a clear introduction, body, and a conclusion? Are ideas with smoothly using transition words? However, furthermore, as a result, the next is lexical research. Is the vocabulary range appropriate and precise? Is it used accurately? The next is grammar is mechanics. Are spelling, punctuation, and capitalization correct? We got to the example assessment and task and standard. In the beginner, the task is write a postcard to a friend, and the standard is use basic greetings, describe a weather, and one activity using simple sentence with minimal grammatical errors that do not impede understanding. In the intermediate, the task is write a formal email requesting information, and the standard is use appropriate salutation and closings, state the request clearly, organize the email into paragraphs, and use formal register accurately. And the last is advanced. The task is write an argumentative essay on a complex topic. The standard is present a clear thesis, develop arguments with supporting evidence, effectively address counter-arguments, and use a wide range of sophisticated vocabulary and complex grammatical structure with a high degree of accuracy. The third is speaking. What is the goal? To communicate orally in an interactive and effective manner. And what is assessed? This is often assessed in a real time and focused on fluency, interaction, and pronunciation, as well as accuracy. And what is the key criteria for assessment? The first is fluency and coherence. Is the speech flowing smoothly without excessive hesitation? Are ideas connected in a logical, easy-to-follow way? The second is pronunciation. Is the pronunciation clear and intelligible, even if a foreign accent is present? This includes stress, rhythm, and intonation. The third is lexical research or vocabulary. Can the student access and use a wide enough range of vocabulary to discuss a topic without excessive repetition? The next is grammatical range and accuracy. Similar to writing, but assessed in spontaneous speech. Can they use a variety of structure correctly? And the last is interactive communication. Can the student initiate, spot, and maintain a conversation? Do they use listening and turn-taking skill effectively? We got to the example assessment task and standard. The first is beginner. The task is give a self-introduction. The standard, provide name, nationality, and a few simple habits using numerous phrases with pronunciation clear enough to be understood with effort. The second is intermediate. The task is have a short discussion about future plans. The standard, express ideas and ambition without too much hesitations, use appropriate future tenses, and respond directly to a partner's question. And the last is advanced. The task is participate in a debate or an abstract topic with a standard, express complex ideas fluently and precisely, use idiomatic language, adapt speech in real time to counter arguments, and maintain consistent grammatical control. The last skill is listening. The goal is to comprehend and interpret spoken language. What is assessed? Assessment standard for listening measures the ability to extract meaning from audio sources similar to reading, but with the added challenge of processing speed, accent, and sound quality. The key criteria for assessment is first, global comprehension. Can the student understand the main topic or general idea of what is being said? The next is specific information. Can the student identify key details like names, dates, number, or specific instruction? The third is inference. Can the student infer the speaker's attitude, mood, or intention from their tone of voice and word choices? And the last is contextual understanding. Can the student follow the development of ideas and understand understand the durable relationship between different parts of the conversation or monologue.
Okay, now we want to analyze our model. Is it linear with our explanation before or not? So from the type of assessment, there is the diagnostic assessment is from our model. In our model, we provide three questions and two pictures about our topic about imaging versus cast. So the pictures show our topic, so the students can explain about their knowledge about what they can see from the picture. And there are three trigger questions that will be asked to the students and to get their initial knowledge about the repetitive case. Okay, that's for diagnostic assessment, which is used for knowing about the student's competency before we continue to the lessons modality. Okay, and for the formative assessment, we can see from the exercise one. This is fill the blank row. We can see from the exercise one that we have created. This is the students. This is based on the book. It will become our references. And in these stations, the student asks to fill the blank based on the podcast that given to them. So the rubric. This is actually the type of a formative assessment because the student will be assessed during the lesson. And this is two. The exercise 2 is the student asks to analyze the advantage and disadvantage of the e-learning versus cast in the podcast that we give to them. This is the formative assessment because we assess the student during the lesson and we provide the rubrics for these two types of assessment. Okay. Okay, this is the rubric for two exercises before. The first is general understanding of the student about the podcast that given to them, the specific information that they can get from the podcast, the inferences and interpretations, and the vocabulary understanding. Like we are provided each component has its own indicators. For example, like for the response accuracy, there's the indicators. One is if correct complete answer to listening questions or tasks, and the grade and the number or the score for the students to answer if it's linear with the component first is 4. Okay, next. For okay, this is the remedial task we provide in our model. This is actually no, I think we have another. Yeah, this is the final project is the summative assessment, which is the students asked to do in the replay, but we don't create and worksheets for it, which is like the final projection of the role play. The students is asked to create a dialogue about human versus cast with their group member after they finishing the presentations before about the disadvantage and advantage of human. This is actually the evidence or the form of summative assessment. It is for the enrichment assessment that we provide in our model. And then there is remedial task. This is for the students' low achievement. So if they are still don't reach the score that we expected before, we are make the coherent and cohesive a paragraph that from the sentence that we provide before, and then after that they ask to like record a video. They record a video about themselves, break the text. Okay. Okay, the rubric for that exercise is can be seen right here already. Yeah, this is the fluency, pronunciation, grammar accuracy, and then vocabulary, use, common and organizations, confident and military. This is actually the aspect that we assess in our enrichment and our medical class. And then another form of formative assessment can be seen from this instrument, which is we observe the students. Is it appropriate? Is it linear with the aspect of